Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. This one's a little bit different because I'm not actually sharing anything to do with Tier Portal as such. It's more a face-to-face one. It's the first one where I've actually been on camera, so forgive me if I feel a little bit awkward. But this question needed me to actually sort of be here rather than just a screen. I had a message from somebody called Marcelo who said, "Hi, I'd like to know what path you took to become the programmer you are today. Did you take formal courses, go to college, or were you self-taught? Do you maintain any daily study routine? And what would be the main advice or secret you'd give to someone who wants to become an excellent programmer like you?" So first off, I'd like to say thanks for thinking I'm an excellent programmer. I wouldn't necessarily put myself in that category, but I think the key difference is that I promote structure and I like structure, and having something that you can rely on and fall back on, which is structure, definition, planning, familiarity across your programs, a designed and disciplined method to implement things. I think that is the difference between somebody who knows what they're talking about and somebody who develops something. So anybody can write a project, anybody can get anything to work, but the consistency between projects is the difference between a good programmer and an excellent programmer. And I think recently there's been quite a lot of talk about what makes good code, and everyone seems to fall on readability for other people. But I think something that I've realized over the years is that being an excellent programmer, as you've put, your code might not be readable immediately. It's more, can the methods in which your code was written, can they be picked up fairly quickly? And therefore your code becomes readable once you understand the sort of paradigm and the patterns that make up your code. But going right back to the beginning, where you said you wanted to know the path that I took, mine was a little bit different. I ended up finding myself in a position where I wanted to go into engineering. I was very interested in the water industry, and found myself on an apprenticeship in the water industry as a maintenance technician, looking after analytical process instruments, so pH sensors, turbidity sensors, things like that, and then working with PLCs as a result of looking after that process. That was when I was about 16, 17, I started that, and it probably wasn't until I got to about 22, 23 that I actually managed to get hands-on with PLCs in the form of using them for fault finding and making minor edits to programs. I did go on formal courses, and when I say formal courses, I'm talking 1 day, 2 day courses for Allen Bradley and Mitsubishi. And that's going back to quite old software now of the Logix 500 series, GX Developer for Mitsubishi. So its relevance to today's world is it's still relevant, but yeah, it's a long time ago, 20 years ago for me now that I was sort of doing those courses, or about 20 years. And that gave me the confidence to understand and make bigger modifications to PID loops and chemical process controls and things like that. And then I found myself changing roles in the industry that I was in. I was still in water treatment, but I looked after remote boreholes and things like that, and they all had PLCs as well. But I had a bit more time and a little less eyes on me to mess about a bit more with code. And whilst I wasn't changing anything, I got to have a look at much more complex code for membrane systems that did microfiltration and things like that. And what I would do is watch the process go through sequences in the code, make notes and things like that. And then a friend of mine reached out one day and asked if I would be interested in working with him on creating a CODESYS project. And it was quite a basic project, but I knew nothing about CODESYS. So I decided that I would say yes and learn along the way, because I think that sometimes having a reason to actually do something is the best way of learning. And a few weeks went by and I still didn't really grasp CODESYS. This is old CODESYS as well, for those that know it. So it's CODESYS 2.3. And I was having a real issue with understanding CAN messaging and really function blocks, because I came from Alan Bradley predominantly, and the Mitsubishi projects that we used didn't really have function blocks. They were spaghetti code more than anything else. So yeah, I guess I cut my fundamental learning in CODESYS, and a couple of months later, I understood the benefits behind having function blocks that actually had a dedicated function over just organizing code. I understood things like CAN messaging and things such as one of the biggest issues that I had was when working with messaging in CAN bus was the limitations around data and having to move things as bytes or words, or having to restructure things because they didn't fit in the CAN messaging frames that we were allowed. But I had to rebuild floating point numbers and things like that. And that gave me a really good understanding of what happens under the hood of PLCs, and moving information around, what the limitations are for certain hardwares, and also network protocols and things like that. And did a few of those projects, and then decided that I was going to leave the industry that I'd been working in for the last 10 years to join effectively a startup section of a company, of another company. And I would join it as software rather than maintenance. And I did that and got myself into National Instruments, and then working with Schneider as well, so Machine, which for me was great because it's built on CODESYS, so everything felt quite familiar. I'd been working with CODESYS 3.5 a little bit by then, and everything felt good. National Instruments and LabVIEW was something completely different. It's so different to what you do with PLCs, but it did give me an understanding of OOP and things like polymorphism and a lot of computer-based things, but things that I would go on to want later when I came back to PLC design. Some of the management that you can do in LabVIEW and applications like that are sought after when you want to have good templates, have good reusability, and manage data, accept different data inputs and things like that. And yeah, I found myself wishing I could do some of the things that I could do in LabVIEW, especially around accepting more than one data type on an input. And I guess it sparked an interest in how can I be more structured with my PLC development. I decided that the industry I was working in at that point, which was sort of hydraulics and aerospace, wasn't sort of giving me the fulfillment that I wanted. Although I'd learnt an awful lot whilst I was there, I decided to come back to the water industry, but not with the company that I was with before. I was started on LinkedIn by this point, and was seeing a lot about Siemens, and I'd had a run in with Tier Portal once, and I didn't really understand what I was looking at, but it looked clean, it looked good. I liked the way the editor sort of felt, but some of the way it was set up was not very nice. It wasn't in my language to start with, and then we had things like comments being comments and symbols being underneath the rung in the sort of table form, which spun me because I'd never seen anything like that in a PLC code. But it did spark an interest of, I don't understand this and I want to understand it. So the company that I currently work for predominantly use Siemens, and I decided I would go for that job because it would help me plug the gap in my knowledge. I would therefore know Alan Bradley, Siemens, and CODESYS or Schneider, and I thought that would help me fill a portfolio of what I can work with. However, I came across or I started using TIA Portal much more. I decided that I would help redesign what we do in a structured way, and that really gave me the place I am now of teaching and helping people do structured development, because it's just the best way of being able to do things. So part of this question also said, did I go to college or was I self-taught? I touched on the fact that I did some formal training or formal courses, but they were much more maintenance based. And can I get on a program? Can I read logic? Can I make minor adjustments and things like that? I wouldn't say I've ever been on a how do you program course. Siemens was probably the best course that I went on. I did a 5-day TIA Portal course at Siemens headquarters in Manchester, UK. And yeah, that was really good. And that was a bit more fundamentals, a bit more recognition around the software, how to find your way around TIA Portal, and then we looked at basic programs, the whole sort of flying saw analogy that Siemens love to use, basic HMI programming, but it wouldn't have given me the tool set that I have now. That comes through experience. So the question also said, did I have like a daily study routine? And I wouldn't say that I had a daily study routine. I think it's more that I really enjoy problem solving. So I tend to present things such as gaps in knowledge, or why does this do this? I've seen somebody else do that. I present them to myself as problems that need to be solved. And I make notes on that sort of thing. I use basic tools, free tools, such as OneNote and Google Drive and things like that to jot down things that I'm interested in looking at or coming back to. I make use of things like GitHub to track projects, store projects for me to probably never retrieve or go back to. I've spent lots of time looking into things that have led nowhere, but have then given me basic levels of understanding for problems that come up later. And a really good example of that is things like spending time understanding how to swap bytes in communication, which I'd done right back on CODESYS when I was sort of 25. And I never really had a need for it after CODESYS until I started with Siemens, and then came across issues with talking Siemens to Siemens through a PN coupler that swapped the bytes. And it was one of those things where I realized what was happening immediately and thought back. I've made a system for this in CODESYS where I use something called ADR to swap the bytes around, or a pointer effectively to point to a set of bytes in the word and then restructure it in a new word, but the other way around. And that's effectively what I did in Siemens, and it worked fine. And then getting my head around things like libraries. I didn't necessarily have a need for libraries when I started looking into them. I just didn't know what libraries were. So there was a whole section of TIA Portal that I didn't understand, and it wasn't covered in courses that I'd been on. So I just started poking around. It's the same with things like VCI and software units and things like that. No actual need for that right now, but I like to have a base understanding. So I think really the best answer to what did I do to understand this stuff is more curiosity and discipline, I guess. I wouldn't say I'm the most disciplined person, but I am quite curious in why don't I understand something, especially if there's quite a lot of information out there so other people understand it. Without sounding, I don't know the word for it, but big-headed, I guess. I'm like, if other people can understand it, there's no reason why I can't understand it. And my experience tells me that you end up understanding everything with enough time. So yeah, there has been times that I've spent an awful long time understanding certain things, and then I found that I've never used them again. But I do like understanding things. So yeah, I think between having that level of curiosity and the discipline to write things down, to make references, to build systems, I think that's probably what makes me feel like I'm set apart to sort of the average. But I certainly wouldn't say that I'm special in any way. Um, Maybe I'm being sort of a bit humble there, but I think that I just have structure, and I'll be really honest. I'm terrible for finding the laziest way of doing something, um, and I find that having structure, where I can go to a library, things are already tested. I've already put the work in up front, and it means that I can just pull something out and put it somewhere and know that it will work. Well, that's lazy, but it works, and I know that I'm safe in being lazy like that. So it might cost more time up front, but it does pay itself back. And maybe lazy is not the right word. It's more I'm utilizing tools to their most efficient. But yeah, there's a lot of people, and I'm not labeling anybody or any engineers or anything like that. This isn't aimed at anybody in particular, but there are a lot of people out there who won't put the time in up front to make their life easier later, especially when that comes with learning curves or any sort of difficulty, or when it's against a project deadline, it's costing money, it's costing time. Um, yeah, sometimes it can take a very long time to see this pay itself back. But when it does start paying itself back, you're happy that you've done it. So I probably rambled a bit there, but yeah, I hope that answers your question, and thank you for putting it in. And see you next time.